I'd like to call this meeting to order. Ask you to stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is there anyone recording besides? I like that. All right.
Texting count?
If you're going to text, please put your cell phones on vibrate or off, please, if you could. Thank you. Oh, that reminds me to speak on the sewer. All right. The first thing on the agenda, I put on just as a notation. Back November 25th, the board voted, after some consultation with the COA director, the Council on the Aging director, about their older van had seen its better days, and Bethany had come across a way to get a newer van through Lawrence Regional Transportation Authority. At that time, we had voted to allow her to go out to bid. The bid number was in the $3,000 range. It was agreed that the following day, the day with the bid, she was going to discuss with the Chief Procurement Officer, Jeff Ritter, and the town's mechanic on what would be a fair bid for that vehicle after the mechanic had looked at it and they had talked about it. And I believe also made arrangements to have it driven back to Templeton if a CDL license was needed. So what happened in the aftermath, they won the bid in the amount of $3,612. But the good news is that Bethany, being the department head that she is, decided to make a few phone calls and ask some questions. And with some help from State Rep Denise Andrews, she was able to get the van at a cost to the town at a cost of $1,635. And that's a testament to Bethany going the extra bit, looking out for the funds that she has to spend. It's also a state rep helping out, and I thought that rated a public acknowledgement and a thank you. So thank you very much for that, Bethany.
It really was the helpful representative, because she was fantastic.
Good job. The next item on the agenda is a discussion on the vendor warrant checks. That's the weekly bills and things that are paid from town funds through the treasurer's office. Mr. Ritter, do you?
There is an issue, I call it an issue, not a problem, about the process of issuing vendor checks. The board and advisory, I believe, asked some time ago, many months ago, in the summertime, that we institute a single process for paying our vendors, which included the issue that drove it was paying water and light bills. The Department of Light and Water has us cut their checks, and then we will return the checks to the Light and Water Department. They burst the checks, they decide, whether to stuff the envelopes, hold the check, etc. And from an accounting point of view, that's not a good business process, because we're not treating everybody the same. We should put the checks in envelopes and mail them out. A single point of contact for paying the town's bills. Well, that was taken as advice that was perhaps too literal, and the issue to be brought forward is that we occasionally get a request from a vendor of the town, select board member, department head, to hold a check, to not mail the check to the vendor, but to hold it for disbursement manually when someone comes in to pick up their check. And it's caused a little bit of confusion because the treasurer does not want to deviate without some policy statement from the board that says, on occasion, and as needed as an exception to the general rule that we mail checks, we will allow the treasurer to hold a check and hand it to yours truly to pay the electrician who came in to put new light bulbs in town hall a few weeks back. And he submitted an invoice, and I had a check cut, and he came in to pick up his check rather than mail it to him. There was a particular business reason for doing that. So the issue is whether or not we're going to treat everybody literally the same way, or whether the town wants the occasional exception for someone to be able to hold a check. And usually it's for a department and a department head in particular. We don't do this casually for the general government or general business.
Any member of the board have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, there's always the exception. I mean, there's certainly circumstances when holding the check and giving it, directly to the vendor is warranted. I mean, there's circumstances always, create different, different conditions. So while it might be our objective to treat everyone the same, there are certainly going to always be exceptions.
I agree. Would see no problem having it as a general policy statement that checks should be held by the treasurer unless a department head makes a specific request that for a particular reason, a check be given directly to them. And then if for some reason it becomes a problem because the department head is asking for 10 checks which I don't imagine happening, but just to cover bases, if it becomes a problem, then the treasurer obviously is more than welcome to inform us of that, and we can bring it up in a meeting rather than waiting for individual board of selectmen approval every time there's a request.
To add to that, maybe it would be a good idea to give that oversight or authority to town administrator.
Oh, correct. I would agree. Yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
rather than tracking down
Correct.
or to selectmen.
I was
Okay.
just gonna say the same thing as Ken as far as giving out checks, more than not, they're given to the departments, not directly to the vendors themselves from the treasurer's office. The departments are usually the ones that are requesting that occasional check back for whatever reason it might be.
Mark?
The reason we need some sewer department once in a while is guys have licenses that we have to be renewed. And we've asked for a couple of times because it's got a pile of paperwork that has to go with it. And I don't think we should have to send all that paperwork to the selectman's office and have to put the check in and send it out. Once in a while, we're gonna need something like that done. It's not all the time, but it's certain things that are time-sensitive papers, we want to make sure that it
It
goes
has to
out.
get in.
I guess I would say, the pendulum was way over here and we swung it way over here, and the reason we're just asking to moderate it a little bit is because we all need guidance, especially the treasurer who took the directive very clearly to heart and just needs the latitude to release checks occasionally.
Any further input from the board?
Do we need a motion? Or, I don't think we need to make a formal
I don't think
motion.
it's a motion, I think it's guidance.
Yeah.
That we should allow for this discretion, either by the treasurer or, I would suggest after the, town meeting vote back in May, and what's further on the agenda here is that, we could give that authority to, the town coordinator, administrator, rather than if a thing comes up, rather than trying to track down an individual selectman, which may or may not be, able to be accomplished. He is right now basically charged with day-to-day, administration and assisting us. And, rather than call this one, and he calls Jeff, and then, he tracks down one of us, and then, to get back to him, and then it's just, as was indicated, by the outside consultant, Matt Angel, and the town accountant on Friday's meeting was, some of these things do need to be cleaned up to become more efficient and not doing things, making it more complicated and more steps than needed. So, I would suggest that based on what we've heard and other members of the board, that, that guidance should be there, that if a department head or if an issue comes up, and granted, I mean, not, if it becomes a regular thing and it's involving, 10, 12 checks or something, and it seems something's funny, then we could address that as an individual thing. But as a general rule, if there's an exception to be made, to make things happen, and I certainly know, personally, when Mark talks about licensure and stuff, sometimes it's time sensitive, and that payment needs to be made so you don't lose things. So, Dan, do you have any issue
Yes,
with that, or do you agree with that, or?
I'd like to speak.
So,
The reason I was told there was a time when I used to return all the checks. I did not send the checks out. I used to return all the checks to the Light and Water Department. They would then put them in their own envelopes with their own letterhead and distribute them and track who received them, when they got them. I was instructed not to do that, and the reason I was instructed not to do that is because it was varied from the process. We need to have a single process that we can use evenly across the board. Now, I expressed the fact that if we do that, it's gonna cost me more time and money, because I then have to do the work that the light company is doing. I have to put stamps on them, buy the stamps, load the stuff, the envelopes, do that work. So I expressed that fact, and I was instructed that that doesn't matter, we need to have one process to make sure that the situation is, quality control. I didn't receive extra help to do the work. I was just informed that I had to do the work. Now, if we are gonna have exception to the process, I have no problem with that whatsoever. The problem I have is that the reason I was prevented from giving the checks to the electric and water to begin with is because it was an exception to the process. So, all I'm trying to say is, if you want to try to make things efficient, it was fine the way it was. And I don't see how this new direction serves the town, personally.
well, I would think, for the reasons you just mentioned, that you're doing things doubly.
Now I am.
Okay, so if we have this common sense type thing, if you will, to be, if there's an exception or extenuating circumstance, whatever that may be, then we should certainly do that.
Yes, if it makes sense and is acceptable to do it once, why not use the discretion to do it where it makes sense universally?
But, as I stated, I think it should be, if there's an issue where it's like a repeating for no, and again, sometimes this has to be a judgment, and getting a hold of a Board of Selectmen member is not always possible. So again, I think we should delegate that,
I don't know.
to,
Yeah.
I wasn't attempting to get a hold of any
Okay.
select board member. It wasn't me.
No, what I'm saying, if there's an issue like that, if there becomes back and forth, you know, well, why can't you do this, that, you know, and then to get a definitive answer, or sometimes to stop that, you know, you say, well, I'll get a hold of this one or that one. And an individual who's in the office regularly, you know, on a regular full-time basis, I think would be the better route, rather than trying to get a hold of one of us.
I will do whatever you want me to do, but I would like to express that it concerns me that we make policy changes based on political differences. And that is not, in my mind, efficient.
Yeah. Perhaps we should consider having checks, because obviously the Treasurer's Department has taken on some additional work. Perhaps checks for enterprise funds, such as light and water, sewer, those checks get returned to those departments for disbursement. All other town departments are still dispersed through the Treasurer's office. You know, that way, that could shift a little bit of the workload back to the originating department. If light and water, you know, seems to be the department with the most exceptions, then that would, you know, alleviate part of the problem. And it's definitive. Enterprise funds are done this way, everybody else is done this way.
Is that agreeable? Julie, is that
I
direction would be,
believe enterprise funds account for probably 30% of the workload. And so we have a fiduciary responsibility to oversee that. That's how I
Okay.
feel.
okay, you done too?
There were a couple of reasons why the checks were all brought back to the treasurer's office. One being that they wanted them to be dispersed out of one office, not multiple. And when a check is cut for, say, Comcast, for example, all invoices go on one check. If light and water is on that one check, then all the other departments have to rely on light and water to mail that check out. We don't know when that's gonna happen. So when the checks are dispersed or bursted, whether they're paper clipped to a piece of paper or stuffed in an envelope, there's no time savings on that. But those were some of the reasons why they were brought back to a central office to be processed and mailed out of one office. There was just the concern of the department heads not getting literally the occasional check back for licensing, postage, a reimbursement for an employee. Those are the issues that are at hand, not so much light and water.
So it's basically, it's really the occasional thing that comes up.
It's the occasional check, that's the issue, yes. Not
And that is probably certainly the reason that we have department heads and people in charge of things to make a decision like that. So I would say the direction, if you will, would be if the occasion arises, we need to use, again, common sense, or however you want to put it, that if it makes sense to do it that way, for the occasional item, time-sensitive things, or something of that nature, to deviate from the hard and fast line. So,
Final comment?
yes.
Thanks for trying, Doug. You should be aware, if you're concerned about fiduciary responsibility, you should be aware that the light department currently pays their own, it's called MWEC payments. I don't touch them. They pay them directly. You sign the warrants for them, and they're paid directly from the light department. Only thing I do is reconcile their checkbook.
So that will be fine. The occasional item that you have to be done, if it's asked, you can just do that, all right?
Use my discretion. I'll take that to mean I'll use my discretion.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the Maya, and that's the town's insurance, workers' compensation insurance proposal.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I thought I had included it in the packet, but I perhaps did not. Did you get it? Oh, you do have it, good. This is an offer. It can be refused or accepted.
And this is an offer to renewal through Maya. A 0% rate change for fiscal year 2015 and a rate increase of no more than 2.5% for fiscal year 2016. Have we, I think I know the answer, but have we, I know it's been talked about, I'm not sure if it's ever been done, to go out for an insurance bid to get comparisons, rather than just taking Maya, which is the nonprofit insurance arm of the Mass Municipal Association, which may or may not be a good deal for the people who pay the bills, and that would be the taxpayers.
Mr. Spring and I were having a discussion on that very topic at 4 o'clock, or was it 3:30 this afternoon? That the town has not had an insurance advisory board process for a number of years and should have one. We should look at all of our coverages, and that is, it's not a short-term or simple task. It is a fair amount of trudging up the hillside, but it requires commitment by a small group of people. I'm willing to sign on, but we need probably the 3 or 4 others willing to first discuss the town's insurance needs internally, consider the union contracts that are in place and whether any proposal would affect those contracts, and then ultimately the goal is to go out to market for our insurance coverages for property and casualty, for workers' compensation, and maybe even for health insurance. Long overdue.
I'm pretty sure that I recall that that came up and it had not been done, either insurance committee, board, or going out for bid in quite some time. We had just stuck with,
Probably 5 or 6 years, I'm gonna guess, 5 or 6 years.
More
well,
than that.
it just stuck with one vendor, and it has been it.
To their credit, I will say Maya it's an association of cities and towns. It's a mutual company. We do benefit from credits, premium credits, due to longevity, and that's because we've been with them a long time, and due to favorable loss ratios. But prudent fiscal management would still say it's worth testing the waters.
Any member of the board have? Julie?
How long is this offer valid for?
Until the end of, sometime in January, I believe. Oh, nope, December 20th, although I haven't spoken to Chuck Wynn. I'm sure I could try to get him to extend it. This is a typical marketing ploy. Sign on now. They gave us, a month's notice, of December 4th to December 20th. What's that, 3 weeks' notice?
Yeah.
Sign on the dotted line and we'll give you no premium increase. And you're bound to them with a shackle and your ball and chain for another year.
Do we know what our premium increase was this year?
On the workers' comp, it was 1.9% this year over last year.
Mhm.
And we do have workers' comp audits. They come in and review our payroll to make sure that we have everybody properly classified. And the letter does state we've had very favorable experience, which is true. We've had very few on-the-job workers' compensation losses. Employees that get sick due to disease or injury or accident away from the workplace are not material to this coverage. So we've been fortunate in that we have a very good safety record in town on the job. That said, it's kind of a roll of the dice, which is why I brought it to the board. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, whether you sign or not.
Well, I mean, mathematically, it seems like a good idea, because if we had a 1.9% increase, and if that's, say, typical over a 2-year time, you're now looking at a, 4.8 versus a 2.5 over the 2 years. So, at least if we did do the 2-year proposal, that would give us 2 years then to get all of our ducks in a row to be able to go out and test the market.
Dan, did you have a question?
Yeah, I'd just like to point out that that's not a new idea. We have discussed the fact that we need to restart the insurance commission, which has been pretty much defunct since 2004. It's 9 years. And we have had other insurers in. I can't remember their name, Jeff. It was not specific to workers' comp, but it was generally insurance discussion.
Yep.
Do you remember what?
They were a brokerage firm, so they represent, mostly they represent Blue Cross.
Right,
They
and I
represent
have-
some HMOs.
I got Aflac in, been talking to them, so it's not that we're working in a vacuum. And I do think it's a pretty fair thing to consider.
I know it's been quite a while, I just don't remember the number of years, but I know the insurance commission had been discussed and kicked around and always put on the bad table for whatever reason. Anyone else on the board? Doug, your thought was to go with this and then establish a commission
Correct.
and look further, and for the other insurances. And just see where we can go moving forward, rather than blindly.
Just continue on here. Take the 2 years, because we know we're going to get what appears to be a fairly good rate over the 2 years. But then we really do need to, reinstitute the commission and, start doing, the legwork to get us prepared. Again, we have talked about it a number of times, and, it just, falls by the wayside. Because there's potential to be some real savings in here. And, we're looking
We're not.
at a very tight budget, so any savings we could get,
All right, I would entertain a motion to accept the proposal from Maya. As well as establish the insurance commission to begin looking at other options and to, I guess, eventually, sooner rather than later, go for proposals and talk to companies and see what their rates are and the offerings are, to see if it's worth changing, if we get better rates and better costs for the taxpayers.
I'll make a motion that we accept the Maya proposal currently on the table and begin the process of reestablishing the insurance commission to begin looking at going to bid or looking at possible alternatives in the future at a lower cost.
Would you want to amend that to either the chair to sign or the board to sign?
I'm fine with the chair signing.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes?
Ken?
Yes.
And yes. The next item on the agenda is something we did a while back. That would be action on Class 2 and Class 3 licenses, which involves the sale of cars and the dealing of in parts. The first item is the Class 3 license. It's JL Auto Parts, limited liability, doing business as Stan's Auto Parts at 94A Crossroad, Templeton, Mass. 01468. I remember this on the list. Was this left off, the 3? I mean, the 2, or 3 rather. Okay. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve this license.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Any questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes, motion carries. All right. Safe to assume Class 2 was left off as well. Class 2, Lang's Old Car Parts, doing business as Lang's Vintage Automobiles, 74 Maple Street, Baldwinville, Mass.
Make a motion to approve this license.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes. All right, that's 2 items. The next item is, and I believe the agenda may say the Otter River Sportsman's Club, but it is in fact action on the Otter River Hotel's liquor license. We had a vote on the licenses on November 25th, I believe. And the motion was to accept the license, or approve the license, dependent on the payment of the taxes and the necessary inspections. And I understand that the late payment of property taxes for this license happens more often than not. I think it's a yearly repeating item. This is probably the last Board of Selectmen's meeting of the year due to the holidays. And I understand that the hotel has still not paid their taxes and had no building inspection, no safety occupancy inspection. I see the fire chief and the Board of Health shaking no, so I'm correct. Our only alternative is to disapprove their license renewal for failure to pay property taxes. And New Year's and the year following coming up, if this doesn't get businesses' attentions, I'm not sure what will. Yes, Diane.
It's my understanding that they're in foreclosure.
Well, so, I understand that there is, this motion has to be read, so, you all have it in your packets, correct? The motion to be read. So I would entertain, the motion to be read as, given to us to meet, the ABCC, requirement.
I'll make a motion to disapprove the application for renewal through the ABCC for the First CP 29 Main Street LLC Auto River Hotel for 2014 due to taxes not being paid and no building inspection.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion, questions on the motion? Dave?
I just simply would like a copy of, or something in writing from the selectman. I will go visit him because essentially what's gonna happen is at midnight on New Year's Eve, we're gonna want to close his doors so he can be resolved. So I wanna give him a couple days' notice that if he's not closed,
Okay.
simple as that. I mean, if he can take care of it, he's still got time to get it corrected.
He's, I think he's had more than his share of time, especially it's a yearly, it seems to be a yearly, I know what you're saying, it's closed for the year. But I think as was brought to one other establishment by the board, by me, that if this is your business and your livelihood, you pay attention and do everything that's needed and required to keep your license, to keep from being suspended, to watch your employees, and to be there at closing if it takes that. We can only hold these people's hands so often, so long. It's just, he's thumbing his, you know, if your license depends on your taxes and your inspections, I would think you would do them. Dan, did you have?
Just a point of clarification, you may have covered it, and if I missed it, I'm sorry. You're talking about the order of the hotel, the paper says the order of the sportsman's club?
Yes, I said at the beginning that
You did, okay,
it was a
fine.
mistake. Yeah, that's all right. Did you have something? Ken?
No, wait till after.
Just to clarify, they do have time to pay their taxes and get an inspection done by Thursday, the 26th. We can have a meeting on the 30th, and that would be their deadline if they were to do those. We have to have another meeting. Take another vote, because they have to be postmarked on the 31st to go back to Boston.
Understood. And I believe that also was discussed at the November 25th meeting when we did all these licenses. And that was one of the things that was brought up. Ken?
Right, and just as a point of clarification, I mean, it is their legal right to every year do this. They are charged penalties and interest for the ability, the privilege of paying their taxes late. But as the chair correctly stated, we don't have another meeting this year, so if they do not pay their taxes and get their inspections done, we cannot approve it until approve the issuance of the license until we meet in January. I mean, assuming that we now have a motion to disallow the, so it's not a shutdown for the entire year, it's, oh, sorry, go ahead, did you,
If they pay their taxes and get an inspection, and the vote by the board is not taken by the 30th and postmarked by the 31st to the ABCC, as of January 1st, they have to file a brand new
From scratch,
license
right.
across the board.
Right.
So it's not as easy as coming in front of us, they have to completely go through Boston again, which is a whole couple month process.
right.
What day is, that electronic thing over there,
Yeah.
what day is Christmas so we can see
It's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday?
30th is a Monday.
Yeah, the 30th is a Monday.
So I'd be willing to meet the 30th if they do pay. I mean, because they are a business in town, you know, they have to.
I understand.
So,
You know, they just need to get the message that,
you know. Can we, I wonder, is it something we could change our regulations that say, you know,
I
you
think
have to
it's a
pay by
I know
the.
it's a.
Try changing, like, the taxes
Mhm.
to 6 months
But I think
from a
state
year,
law
but that's
says-
state law. So this is state law, so we'll supersede any bylaw. Even if we try to change the procedure,
But even
it's
if
a
we,
state law.
but could we say by the last selectmen's meeting, you know, because, yes, you could pay
They
it
have a
on the
right to
30th.
pay
Late.
late. That's their right to do that.
So then, we are obligated then
Yeah.
to have a
To have
meeting
meetings.
on
All right.
December 31st of every year.
We can
No,
always
you're not.
increase our penalties.
You're not obligated, that's the point.
He
Don't issue the
has the right
license.
not to pay his taxes to the thirtieth,
have a
but
right
he
not to
certainly
have a
cannot tell the Board of Selectmen to hold a meeting to meet his lack of
Yeah.
timely payment for his license.
There may be another agenda item that like will necessitate us holding a
Tail should
meeting
be
on the
wagging
30th.
the dog.
So maybe
say never.
You're right, so that we may end up having a meeting on the 30th anyway to vote on, or to do some, schedule a special town meeting or whatever else. we're gonna-
always starting stuff. But yeah, you are.
But I won't hold a meeting just for that,
Yeah,
just,
no.
right.
But yeah, we may. Dan?
I believe the property's not in tax title, but when you say the taxes are due, is that local, state, federal, what taxes?
That's his, local property taxes.
Real estate, property
Yeah,
taxes?
real estate taxes. That, you can be behind up to 1 year
Yeah. before
by
going to tax
state
title.
law.
I
But
realize.
because he waits till the last second, does not mean that we have to post and hold a meeting
Understood.
just to accommodate him.
No, understood, but if he's closed, then he has no means to pay the bill, so I want to think about that. We need to-
At this point in town, maybe the town could go into the hotel
Booze business.
business. Generate some income. So the motion was made and seconded. Diana?
I just want you guys to know, he made arrangements to make payments last year. They made one payment, that was it. They didn't stick to their bargain. So,
Okay, well, I guess if he gets this letter. No further discussion? We have a motion, it's been made and seconded. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes. I believe we should send a letter to them.
I'll prepare a letter tomorrow for your review and probably have council look at it briefly.
And the chief will need a copy.
It should be like registered mail, so we can say. it did
Certified
not-
mail.
Yeah, we did not get it. If that's fine.
Yep, yep. Yep.
Tuesday.
All right, the next item on the agenda is the award the bid to the Massachusetts, excuse me, thank you. Is action to award the bid for Massachusetts Community Development Block Grant Fund application. I believe with last meeting, we looked at the proposal. I believe it was the only from Community Opportunities Group. And the bid was awarded to Communities Opportunities Group. So we just need to vote to approve that and sign it. The motion for the chair to sign, is that's how it is presented.
I'll make a motion for the chairman to sign the bid for the Community Opportunities Group Fund application preparation in the amount of $9,900.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes. All right. next item,
Could I have a follow-up to that?
yes,
I believe at 1 o'clock last Thursday, there was community input.
Correct?
Did many people show up?
Only one person
Only
showed
one
up.
person showed up, okay.
There are, however, 2 more sessions scheduled for the, I believe, the 7th and 15th. They were just scheduled, of January. We'll put them on the town website. They're in the evening, so obviously for better attendance purposes.
There's a 1 o'clock and a 6 o'clock and a 7. And an open meeting here, or just open meeting on
13th, okay.
you all set, Julie?
Yes,
Okay.
thanks.
The next item on the agenda are some bids for work at the senior center. And Doug is a member of that committee, and he's probably the committee and the driving force behind this project for a number of years. So I will let him speak on these items.
Yeah, the items that we had put out for quotation were the fabrication installation and the decking for the emergency exits, ramps which will come off of the back of the building at the emergency exit doors and wrap around the building and come up to ground level at the front. We only had one respondent to that. It was Dean Page Welding in Otter River. So the Oversight Committee is recommending that we award the contracts to them. The other items that we put out were to construct the front entryway and the portico, as well as build the cricket roof that will go in between where the buildings come together and the roof currently makes kind of an archway. This will allow the water to drain towards the back and go out into the detention pond. And then the third item is for some molded flashing that will go along the front of the building to seal where the building sits in the foundation shelf. Because the buildings are modular, they're built out of a steel frame. So unlike normal construction where you would have bolts coming up out of the foundation that screw the structure to the foundation, in this case there's a shelf that the steel sits on. So this fabricated flashing will take care of making that area weather tight. Now we did have 2 respondents to those quotes. One was Moulton Construction out of Ashburnham, and the other was Harris Brothers from Baldwinville. The Harris Brothers had lower quotes, so the committee is recommending that we award those contracts to Harris Brothers.
Do you want these motions separately, or as a group?
You can do them as a group, it's fine with me, it doesn't matter, whatever you'd like to do.
I think we should do it separately so people know.
Okay.
Okay. I'll do the first one. I'll make a motion to award the emergency exit ramp fabrication to Dean Page Welding for a cost not to exceed $18,000.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes. Motion carries.
I'll make a motion to award the emergency exit ramp installation and painting to Dean Page Welding. The cost for paint not to exceed $1,800, and the cost to install fabricated components, $7,500.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes.
I'll make a motion to award the exit ramp fiber grate decking to Dean Page Welding for a cost not to exceed $9,400.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion, questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes.
I'll make a motion to award the senior center main entryway rough-in to Harris Brothers Construction for a cost not to exceed $21,550.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion, any questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes.
I'll make a motion to award the senior center cricket roof and fascia to Harris Brothers for an amount not to exceed $8,300.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion, any questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes.
And last but not least, I'll make a motion for the senior center building front flashing to be awarded to Harris Brothers for an amount not to exceed $2,750.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion, any questions? Hearing none, seeing none. Julie?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And yes. All right. All right. Now, the topic of the day, and I believe I would defer to Mr. Ritter on this for comment. This is just where we are with the tax rate.
Well, we're in the process of closing out fiscal 13, which should be accomplished by the first week of January, at which time that filing goes to the state to certify 13 and the town's free cash, and then allows us to determine exactly what our beginning balances for fiscal 14 are. You have to have the carry-in from 13 to determine a clear balance on account for 14, which is really the issue for the town. I would point out that in 14, the town's current budget proposal does not involve the use of any free cash, any stabilization funds, and any outside sources of revenue, which can explain in part the deficit on the 14 books that the town accountant has uncovered. We have not counted revenues this year in the way that we have counted revenues in past years. By way of an exhibit, I just found and brought over this evening the fiscal 12, going back 2 years, fiscal 12 budget, which was voted in May of 2011, about 2.5 years ago. This budget, as approved at town meeting, used $686,000 of free cash to balance the town's budget in fiscal 12. It also counted all enterprise funds on the books, as well as local receipts of $1,500,000. This year, local receipts in total estimated show about 960,000, call it $1 million. It's interesting that local receipts 2 years ago are estimated at $500,000 higher than they are today, and that we use the entire lump sum of our free cash. I think that may explain the revenue shortfall that is occurring in 14. We are simply not counting on those resources as available cash resources. if the town were to get certified free cash and make a determination that it wanted to spend it to close this deficit that we're in, that would be one way out. Reducing expenditures is another way out. Those are really your, raise taxes or cut spending. If you do find other sources of revenue, they surely are windfalls, and they surely aren't going to be available to you on a regular basis, not to be counted on.
For those of you who weren't there on Friday, we had a meeting where we discussed this very issue. And there is the cash register going off. There is, the town is over its tax levy of $505,000. In simplistic terms, I was talking with our forensic accountant consultant today, Matt Angel. In preparing the 2014 fiscal year budget, and this was my just simple thinking, but he said that's a way to look at it. Somebody copied someone's homework, and their homework was wrong. So that's in a nutshell. It does no good to point fingers and want to, grab somebody and hold them up and say, yeah, blah, blah, blah. It is what it is. We were given 3 options, and there's any combination. One is an override. It's a tax increase. Shred the budget. Use available cash. We were told that we have some funds available totaling about $250,000 or around there. Some stabilization money, some overlay excess, or there's a combination of all 3. And in the third option was included would be wait to close out 13 and see what our free cash is, and unwisely throw that at the problem to immediately, depending on whatever the free cash is. If it was enough, we could perhaps cut expenses some, use the free cash, use the stabilization money, and immediately, fix that problem for 14. We were also given the great news that this would be an issue for the 15 budget, because we will have to adjust, because by using an old formula, if you will, that one individual knew where he put all the pieces, and it's not the standard practice for the majority of other cities and towns. There are just several that use it. It's not illegal. I had a talk with the forensic accountant today. It didn't break the law or anything. It's just, it's a small microcosm, and that's where my simple analogy came in, that you copied somebody's homework and it wasn't right, or you didn't understand what you were copying, so you copied it wrong. And that is the scenario. So the sooner that 13 is closed, the better. And I do have a question for Dan when we get finished with, I see some hands, about where we are for fiscal 214 as far as reconciliation of the general ledger and the cash book. In other words, how up to date we are with our 14 folks. Okay.
I just want to make something clear too, and make it a differentiation here. There is, in my mind, and I think in the world of reason, a big difference between determining what happened and pointing the finger. So I think that we cannot be so afraid that someone's feelings are going to get hurt, or that it's going to look like we're pointing the finger, that we just